Right, afternoon ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
For those of you who don't know me, my name's Nicky Uren and I teach science, and I've been at Feltham since 2000 teaching science. But before I did that, even when I was younger, I played games. Now, Nicky and I have been working with the gifted and talented students and what to do with our gifted and talented students. So, what I'm talking to you about this afternoon is how to stretch our gifted and talented students a little bit. But I started this without thinking in terms of science. So before someone turned to me and said, right, in science I want you to stretch the students, I thought I'd grab the chance to just get them to use their brains. Now, when I was growing up, from the age of 11, I started playing really complicated strategy games, war games and board games. It's the only reason that I know where anywhere is on the map. It's the only reason I know any history, certainly Second World War history. It's the only reason I'm really good at maths. And my English was terrible, but it forced me to use creativity because we used to write our own games and ideas for that. So I thought one thing I'd like to get the students to do is to actually play games. So since last year, some of my top set year 10s, I invited back after school to start coming and playing some of the games, because these days they only tend to play games on the computer. So they actually came along, tried out these games, like this one called Seven Wonders here, which is a strategy game. Some of them take half an hour, some of them take a whole day. Now, I've done something stupid and had kids of my own, so that stops me playing the games that take all day, but I still get to play in the evening, and it's great for being social. So I had kids coming back, 6, 7, 8 kids from the gifted and talented sort of register, and playing these games. And to start with, they had to work out the rules and communicate with each other, and it was really good because they actually had to talk to each other face to face, try and work it out, deal with all these cards, deal with the maths of the games, and there were loads of different games. And now they come back voluntarily while I get them some work, and they sit there and they play games, and they started buying their own and bringing them along, and actually arranging to see each other and play games out of school because they're actually face-to-face rather than on a computer. Now, I wanted to then transfer this to the classroom if I could, because I can't buy, these games can cost 50, 60, 70 pounds, can't buy those, and they don't relate necessarily to exactly what you want to teach. Now, you've all got different subjects, but if you look on a site called Board Game Geek, there's a site called Board Game Geek, to which I have to sign up to, there are 66,000 games on there. So you can find games that go with any topic, any subject. They're not all board games, but there's board games, war games, strategy games on there. And I wanted to create one for science. So one of the games I've got at home is called Power Grid. And you play the role of a power company, and you have to try and provide power to a huge area of the country, get loads of money for doing it, and the person that provides the most power, gets the most money, wins the game. It takes about 2 hours to play, and it's strategy. There's no dice involved in any of these games. There's no random dice rolls, it's all on what you decide and understanding the numbers and the odds. So I turned it into a game I could use in the classroom. Now in year 10, our students have to study generation of power. So they have to look at what types of power stations, fossil fuel power stations, renewable power stations. They have to know whether they're quick to start up these power stations or slow, how much pollution they produce, what type. They have to understand where some of the carbon dioxide can go. So there's a lot of complicated concepts in there. Some of them haven't got the concept that you actually burn this stuff as well, so some of them are really basic students. The higher level students get the basics quite quickly, but it can strike them as a really boring topic. Oh yeah, this again. So this game works from the point where you don't teach them very much at all, and you give them the game first. And it makes them ask questions, because without asking the questions, they can't complete the game. Now, I'm going to get you guys to have a go at this in a minute. Now this works with teams of 6, 7, 8. It's designed for quite large groups. So for this particular game, I came up with 120 power stations. Okay. Now there's not 120 different types. There's lots of coal-fired power stations, lots of oil-fired power stations, renewable solar plants in there. There's a few rarer ones in there that the students will have heard of and you may not have heard of that generate power. There's also a few other cards in there which are to do with the amount of electricity we make but aren't actually making it themselves, like energy efficiency. And the idea is to get the students to go, well, sir, what the hell does this one mean? What is it talking about on this one? Which is then your point when you can explain it. And they actually want to know because they're trying to win a game. Now, if we separate you into... if you come up this way, a minute, and if you guys are one team, use this table, I'm going to give you a set of these cards. Now, the first bit is the students spend the first 5 minutes just sifting through the cards because they go, blimey, sir, there's quite a lot of them, aren't there? Or words to that effect. And if you guys take between, and if you work up here, and if the rest of you literally split these ones up between you. Now there's so many cards, which looks really intimidating, and these have been reused. These have been used with 7 or 8 classes now, and 7 or 8 different groups, so they can last for a while if they're on card. So flip them over so they're face up. The number on the back, the letter on the back just shows you what set it is. So you've got all the set D ones. They're the same. Now, you don't have to be an expert at power generation for this, because I'm going to give you the easiest task. Okay, you're not gifted and talented at this yet. All you've got to do, yeah, not yet. I saw the face there. As a team, your task is to produce the 80 gigawatts of power that this country needs. So for whatever topic you're doing, for whatever subject you teach, you could design maybe a game which has a goal. It could be an art-based game based around an art auction and money, and what sells and what doesn't. Okay? You can certainly base this around some sports activities and something to do with the Olympics, something to do with the competition, and different athletes, different footballers and how much they cost to make a team. It's easy to make a game. There's loads of ideas for games. Now your task is to produce the 80 gigawatts that Britain needs, because we've got a bit of an energy crisis coming. Our government can't make its mind up who should produce the power, when we should do it, what type, and all the power stations beginning to be old and wear out and need replacing. You need to produce your 80 gigawatts of power in the cheapest way possible. Okay? This is the easiest scenario of all the different ones. What I tend to do with these cards is we do a nice simple one first, where they get used to the cards and the idea and what some of the names are, and ask some of the questions. And the second and third time, you introduce more ideas. You introduce the pollution idea, how much pollution they are. You introduce things like, I only want you to use renewable ones, and that's all you can use, which then tests whether they know which ones are renewable or not. So you can introduce, I've used this with lower ability groups as well, but I've kept it simple and not worried about complicating the questions, and we've done it with top set groups in the Open Talented. Right, I'm going to leave you for 4 or 5 minutes to try and pick some of the cheapest power sources. Now on there it says GW. GW is the number of gigawatts produced. Okay, and it's got a cost in billions. Now that includes the cost of building it and dismantling it sometimes, and the fuel you buy in its life. So I've had to average it out. I did spend some time online making the figures realistic. They are not made up off the top of my head. Okay, so, and there's a big group, which makes this really hard, and the students have to do it in a big group, and they squabble over the maths involved with it as well. So try and pick about 80 gigawatts worth of power, cheaply. On the screen up here is somewhere we can record your scores if we want to. So I'll leave you with that a minute. You need to talk to each other, wave the cards around, and have a look. Yeah, so there's 4 1 2. You are allowed to ask questions. Get hands on as well. Grab a set if you want. Look for some, put some back. Don't feel you can't touch.
That needs power. That needs nuclear, so no, we're not worried about that. I think it's as cheap as possible.
Yeah, that's what they told
We worked out put one use peak.
And I've got, obviously I'd like to print out some of those and something, but that's not making them find pictures to put on there, so they've got something to. Also, you see there's the pictures on it, so they go, oh, that kind of thing looks like that. And I did research on thinking because I wanted to make it reasonably realistic.
You don't need to use them.
And you always have to cut coal because it's not real, because you pay for coal every month to buy it, but I've just put one cost on there. But wind power, see some of the kids get 5 feet soon. Yeah, it is, and they have to think about it and they might ask questions. What should we do?
So you can, we need to 80 gigawatts.
And it's on the downside is you have to work, because some kids will sit back and let the others who try it out.
So I've got
It's a different type of
So what takes me
with my 10, you've got all the talented ones who can't through. And the others are still crying, the others are really and they weren't any better. No, it doesn't. And I told them halfway through the second scenario, I said, I've put you together because I'm expecting you to get the highest score. You know, and I think by the end of it, by the time we've done the cost one, then you can do one, two, so at least sit 2 produced. So it's a different number on there. If you can spend
Unless I've got any work.
8 for 6 billion. Okay.
4 billion each.
14. That was 14, so it was a staple.
Yeah, but that's 2 for 4.
Now, when I've done this with the students, I've normally encouraged them to use a piece of scrap paper. Someone starts roughly totting up how much they've got, for example, something like that.
We've got Russell, who's actually
Russell's got
doing it.
his hair, yeah. I let them use as much scrap paper as they want.
That's 4, so we've got
1 for 1?
We've got 2 for 1.
2 for 1.
No.
4 billion for 5.
No, you're the other way round.
If you've got some energy efficiency stuff in there, you're gifted and talented. If you haven't got energy efficiency stuff in there, you're not.
Coal, nuclear,
That's the same. We're just going
gas,
oil.
oil.
You can. If you read, if someone spots the cards, there are ways in there to reduce the amount of electricity you need. We need to produce 80 gigawatts, but you might not need that much. There are cards in there which might give you other options. Oh, and some of the cards are illegal.
Yeah,
Yes.
does that
But-
make us gifted and talented?
Illegal in Europe.
No, what it means is, if you're in Europe, you can't use those cards because European Union rules means you can't use them. But we're going to blow that out of the water, we're going to ignore the European Union, we're going to leave Europe, we ignore their rules, we can have any polluting plants we want, whether they're living in Europe or not. So,
we're
as much coal as Mr. Pickling wants.
Like some sort of environmental.
Okay, just going to give you another minute or two to try and track down roughly 80.
20 watts.
Some of them are different, like
It's the
that.
struggles, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he says that we could use ones that were
Reduce, I'm
So
starting to find them. So that costs, so that reduces it by 2 gigawatts and only costs 1 billion.
Good man. Yeah, well done.
There's a 2 gigawatt which costs 2 billion, but let's look for the better stuff.
2 gigawatt, half a billion.
So
Yeah,
invest
sweet.
in energy
So
efficiency.
what was it, 2 for 1?
2 for 1 and then 2
Yeah,
for
okay. So we're down
so we're down to 76
But
gigawatts.
does that mean that we've got to have an energy
76
efficient?
million. 76 million, and we've spent.
Do we need to use,
Less.
yeah, but maybe we need to use that card with an energy efficient thing, so something like wind
I
farms.
see what you mean, yeah.
Mr. Uren,
Yes.
Yeah.
if we want to use, because obviously we're very environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
This time, we don't want
We're going to
to
start last year and half.
But you
if we want one of the, if we use one of these, does that mean we have to use one of the, like an offshore wind farm?
That just means you can reduce, you only need 79 gigawatts instead of the 80, it reduces the amount you need.
But costing's going to go up, but I don't have to use energy efficient source to generate electricity.
No, so that's investing in insulation, that's investing in the whole water jackets around those, just double glazing.
It's 2 5 4, is that?
Okay.
4 for 3.
Some of the things in there just purely reduce pollution, don't need any of those, we're not doing that, we're just doing it cheaply, some governments go on cost. So they can cut taxes.
So how many 5 for 3?
I'll answer
3s we got?
that.
I've got 5 3.
Right, I've got the
Here we go.
seven.
I've got 2 more 5 for 3s here.
Yeah, see there's the
No,
fold.
and
Things that go in there.
9.
For 5, and we've got 2 that are.
Yeah, so it's different scenarios.
And then left 3 are they? So for 15.
We've got 4 1 for 1.
Yeah, but it's worth it
4 1
for this one. No, there's certain things I'll not put that much time into.
So 1 gig.
These are bad 3.5.
Alongside
Yeah. Guys, one more minute and then we'll,
Are we there, sir?
5.
as long as you're roughly around 80. Doesn't matter if you're over by 1 or 2 gigawatts, that'll be fine, but some lights won't go on if you don't have at least 80. That's some energy efficiency, so you want 80 or just
How
over.
many are you on?
That's it.
That's it now.
We've got 80 of them.
See if you could add
We
up.
need to.
Add up. Do you need to? Say again? Not for this, but normally with the kids, I'd go through it a little bit with them and say why we put those ones. Because obviously we've got loads of coal. Yeah, that's more. But the other scenario is it won't work because it's really dirty, so you say you can't wash condoms. No, so what I'd do is get someone in the group to just tot up the costs and trust them to some extent and get them to double check each other's results. So, hey, could you add up the cost? Just, I don't. Normally I'd get the kids to add it up themselves, double check each other's and stuff, okay, on here. So you see these huge lists on paper, which you don't normally get now with numbers being added up. It's quite amusing to see. So Damon's having up over there. So we've got a pile.
I think, yeah, Mr. another chance.
Could someone roughly add up how much that would cost? Does that come to 80 then?
And that gives us, that gives
More
us
than
a
that, yeah.
Okay, if you can add up the cost roughly.
For savings.
With the minus. How much did it cost then?
57.
Yeah.
37. Very good. Okay.
We're beating them.
They're on 37 billion over here at the moment.
We're way under that.
Under.
£12.50 we've got.
Anyway, if one of you can add those up maybe while we finish off the rest. Right, so 37 billion here. Now, when you're doing this with a class, I've actually done this over the course of 2 or 3 lessons, but the energy generation topic would normally take a series of 4, 5, 6 lessons to do. And you've covered an enormous amount of it with all the things come up. And there are times you stop the class and go, right, you're all struggling with this, none of you have used this because you don't know what it is, do you? And you stop and teach them about something on one of the cards. And they're more interested then because they've been struggling to win this game and go, really, I can use it for that? And they suddenly learn a bit more as well. So you intervene and stop them, whether it's just one group or the whole class, and say, right, some of you are missing a trick, like the energy efficiency. Oh, can we use that? So can I just produce less power if I'm more efficient? And then you stop and you go, well, yeah, that's putting in loft insulation. That's paying to help people double glaze. Because if you reduce the amount of electricity, I don't need to build Mr. Pigden's coal-fired power station that he wanted or whatever. And I can reduce the amount we need. He does still want them as well. Okay. Did you get it? Oh.
Getting there.
Cool, okay. What I quite often get the students to do is I put the computer on and there's a score sheet for them. So they can write in how much the cost is, or how many gigawatts came from nuclear or coal, or the different types, so you can compare. So quite often one student's there typing into the computer, and you can record it then, so you've got the figures for the next lesson. You say, do you remember last lesson it cost you this much? So if you've got 37 billion now, the next lesson, or for the second part of the lesson, I'm going to say, right, this time you need to use renewable energy, and you can only use renewable energy. How much does that cost? And they find it costs 4 times as much, which is fairly realistic. Or you say to them, I want you to record how much carbon dioxide they're giving out as well, and your job is to produce less carbon dioxide than the other groups. And they start going, oh, this one's good because it only produces 20 tonnes of carbon dioxide. They go, hang on, it's a wind turbine. You're like, yeah, but you've got to use concrete to build it. You've got to drive there and back to repair it, so it still produces pollution. So you can't write in the exam, wind turbines make no pollution. They produce very little pollution. So there's loads of stuff you can feed in. Now, it took me some time over the holiday to produce it, but again, it didn't seem, Nicky's going, how long did that take? It didn't seem quite the same as doing normal work because it went with the games which I love, and it was a bit of a challenge to create it. Now, like I say, Board Game Geek, if you want ideas for games and stuff, and there's games about everything on there. This hopefully just gives you an idea of something you could produce, and although now I can just print off more cards if I need to on that one and reproduce it relatively quickly. So yes, it took a little bit of time to set up, but the kids have enjoyed it and they've been happy to come back for the 3rd lesson and go, right, are we doing that again? And now this time we want to win, and is it going to be more complicated? The last thing I was going to mention then is to make it really hard, and this is for the able and talented lot, I give them a bigger challenge where they each play a role in. So someone is the Prime Minister and they get to decide. No one else gets to decide, they can choose. Whether they agree with someone else or not, the Prime Minister chooses which ones to actually have. And you give that role to a student. You might pick someone who's actually got the ability to override it. And one of my students couldn't. I had to change it for the next group because he just couldn't override everyone else to do it. Then you have people like someone from the environmental lobby who's just interested in reducing the pollution, so they're trying to argue that point. Then you have the defence minister who doesn't want to get in stuff from Russia because he knows that then we might have to get into a sort of aggro with Russia to collect that. Hence why the countries are on there for some of them. And you can use, if I've got 4 students, I just pick 4 of them. If I've got 8 students, I use all the different roles. Now you don't have to have that in a game. That just adds an extra level of complexity. But some of these games are really complicated. Okay? And when I was at school, there were 2 subjects that I was top in the year of. One was maths, one was science. And I spent my...
You had such good maths teachers.
It was a good maths teacher. Absolutely.
He came here.
Not that Miss Weston was here while I was here or anything, yeah, absolutely. And I was playing these games and using my brain and stuff. And yeah, if you can get the kids involved like that, hopefully it would help. So you can design a game for any subject. Okay, there are games out there, you wouldn't believe it, I wouldn't believe it, about any subject. So it might be investing in a game and playing with friends and then going, how can I adapt the techniques, what they call the game mechanics, for something you can use. games. And even if you're doing, I'm thinking with the PE, you might be sat down with them that often doing it, but you can create a game where they can actually go and do the things. I'm sure with it, there are active games where you're, as well. So anything will work. Any questions? Obviously you can catch me later, you can come and have another look. I can show you some of the other stuff that I went through if at any point you want on more ideas on games design, or you want to borrow a game, because I've got a nice wall at home now filled with different games that we play. I want to try one of them out. But okay. Could you just, all of them have got one letter on the back for that one, so if you just literally pile them together. That's the other thing, it doesn't take a lot of sorting out, you can find all the same ones with the same letter together. Although some classes struggle with that. So they can pile up and just go in the bag. Right, thank you very much.